topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Missouri, Tennessee, and the great state of Texas. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Hey, this is the last Friday of the month, and that means a law firm of Lance Drury. Welcome, Lance.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Lance, first of all, I was telling you off air, we got a text that I'm going to be reading, but we just got another one from New Brunswick, which is right outside of San Antonio. And he said, I just found your advertisement about your show today, and I am having tax problems, and I wonder where your office is in San Antonio. Can you give that address out?
Sure. It's 8918 Tesoro, Tesoro, Suite 200.
Okay.
I was just in San Antonio last week for 4 days.
Well, it's a beautiful town, but gosh, Tennessee is beautiful, and Missouri is my home state. Lance, tell people you've got to be the hardest working attorney in the world. Lance, tell people about your firm, and you concentrate in the area of tax relief.
Yes, we do, both at the state level and the federal level, although the IRS is probably 80% or more of what we do. But I now have 16 employees. I have 4 offices: St. Genevieve, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, San Antonio, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee. I'll be going to my Nashville office a week from Sunday, and I'll be there for 4 days. And so we represent people, individuals and businesses. Like I've always said, we're saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong. That's our job. That's what we do. And we work a lot. I've got 2 attorneys in LA. They start at 5 in the morning. And so I'm here. I've got 2 appointments already tomorrow. I'll work Sunday morning, but I work almost every Saturday and Sunday morning. And sometimes I drive from St. Genevieve to St. Louis, an hour away, and I see people up there on Saturdays. So yeah, I'm 71 and a half, and I hope to work 10 more years.
At least. I got to tell you, I got a sort of a tearjerker text after your last show. And I want to read it. It's not real long, but I think there's a lot of people out here like this. You said, I just got through listening to your show. I'm located outside of St. Louis, and it was like God sent. I've been having tax problems, and all of a sudden I see where there's this tax relief show coming on. And I got to tell you, I have been so embarrassed. And this is the key, Lance. I've been so embarrassed that I've gone 5 years without paying my taxes. And it seems like every day I'm looking over my shoulder for the IRS to come get me. Tell me, and after listening to your show, I really have a lot of faith in you, and I will be contacting you in June when my money situation is better. But tell me, how can your firm help me? That's a pretty cool letter.
Yes. Yeah, that's a nice letter. I appreciate that. Those are the kind of people I want to help. And just so you know, you're not alone. There's 25 million delinquent taxpayers in the United States. By 2032, there will be 35 million delinquent taxpayers.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people in your boat. A lot of people listen to my commercial for years before they contact me because they're just not ready to hear it. They're just not ready. They're embarrassed, like this person. So that's not unusual. And, you know, you're going up against probably the most terrifying agency in the federal arsenal. So you need somebody in your corner that's fighting for your interests, because the IRS is not going to fight for your interests, but we will. That's what we do.
Lance, I cannot tell people how I'm just going to use this word. It's dangerous for a person to try to get on the phone with the IRS themselves, because everything I've learned is you can really say the wrong things, and they need to have a professional like yourself talking on behalf of the IRS.
Yeah. And here's the problem. I tell some, you know, like this morning I had a consult and the woman had called the IRS, which is a huge mistake. Then she got a levy letter, because when you call them up, all you're doing is putting you on their radar. So we don't call them up till we're ready to negotiate a settlement unless there's already a deadline in place. And so you don't want to call them up. We can go into the IRS systems, find out what's going on in your case. We have access to records all the way back to 1990. We can get a lot more information from that software that we have than I could ever get by calling and talking to somebody at the IRS. And here's the other problem. I've never seen the IRS as bad as they are now. In the automated collection system, which is where the vast majority of cases are situated, they are not training their employees properly, and they give out bad information all the time. A layperson's not going to know that. But we know it because we spend 50 to 100 hours or more a year just keeping up on this. So you don't want to call them up for all of those reasons. It's, you know, they're not your friend. They may pretend to be a friend, just like people get revenue officers. And they talked about how I said, you don't want to deal with them. They'll be real nice to you. And then when they get you to talk, they'll turn on a dime. He goes, this is exactly what happened in my case. And so you got to have professional assistance. And, you know, we have over 1,000 clients at any one time. I'm hoping for the day when it's 1,500 at any one time, because it really gives me a lot of purpose to be able to do what I can do for people.
Here's our next tech. You know, what I like is this show is really starting to gain traction. We're starting to get more and more texts now and people sending us emails. This is a great question. This comes from Ladue. Is there Ladue, Missouri?
Yeah.
Ladue.
That's a suburb of St. Louis.
Oh, okay. So he wants to know, what do you do if you don't have the money to pay the IRS?
Well, 85 to 90% of my clients never pay the full amount back. But we have to prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay it back. So what we do is we send out a statement once we're sure that the client is compliant, because before they'll even negotiate with you, you have to have the last 6 years' tax returns on file. So we send out the financial statements. That's where people get the biggest bang for their buck in hiring us, because those documents, they're confusing, they're complicated to the average individual. We may have to go through that 3, 4, 5 times. We may have to look at bank statements, credit card statements, debit card statements, cash receipts, because we are going to have to prove with documentation certain categories of expenses, because the IRS compiles what's known as the national standards. For example, housing and utilities, every county in the United States has a different number for those expenses based upon the number of people in the household. But we can exceed that in the automated collection system if we can show the IRS that your actual expenses are higher than the national standards.
We got some text from truckers. It seems like truckers have a hard time keeping up with their bookwork and their taxes. And do you see a lot of truckers getting in trouble with the IRS?
Yes, and in fact, the main people are self-employed people. That's over 70% of my clientele. And the problem is they can be very good at what they do, but they don't keep very good records. They don't have a separate bank account for the business. And so they got to have the documentation, because if they get audited, they're not going to get their business expenses if they don't have proof of them. And then they may tack on a big penalty in addition for all that. So you got to know when you're, everybody thinks being your own boss is the American dream. Well, maybe, but there's a lot of work that goes with that.
A lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and a lot of them, they work late at night. They come home. The last thing they want to do is paperwork. And together so that they clean up the books, they keep the documentation, and they don't have problems then in the future.
Lance, I got to tell you, I just got blown away. A friend of mine actually used one of these big tax services, these national tax services that prepare your taxes for you. And they tell you that if there's a problem with the IRS, that they'll be there with you. I got to tell you, that happened to my friend, and they're nowhere to be seen. It is amazing.
I tell everybody there's 3 rules if you don't hire me. You want to hire an attorney who does this every single day. Don't get somebody that dabbles in it. We spend 100 hours a year keeping up on this. When I was just a small town lawyer, we spent 15 hours a year because they're a bureaucracy. Everything is continually changing. Don't hire an accountant. The accountants are great at what they do. They're great with the numbers, tax preparation, but they don't know. We have seen accountants give horrendous advice to their clients about how to deal with the IRS, and that's because they're just dabbling in it. Number 2, go local. And number 3, don't hire one of the big boys. They just take your money and then they don't do the work, and they never tell you what it's going to cost you. And so you want to hire somebody that has a great reputation. We're a 4.7 out of 5 in St. Louis. We're a 4.9 out of 5 in Nashville, Tennessee. We're just getting started about a year ago in San Antonio, so we don't have any Google reviews down there yet, but soon we will have some reviews from San Antonio as well.
Now, someone just wrote, do you only cover San Antonio? Do you handle any of the other Austin or Houston?
We don't have physical offices there, but we would certainly take clients from those areas. We get people in California, Louisiana, Florida. So, I even had a guy from Yonkers, New York. Wow. He called me. We're representing him now because a buddy of mine had used me years ago and was very pleased with our services. So yeah, we'll take clients from anywhere. That's the beauty of the IRS work. It's federal. So we can practice anywhere in the United States because it's all the same rules and procedures, unlike the states.
Mark from Nashville wants to know, do you go on audits? My business is being audited. Do you go with business owners?
Well, we're going to keep the business owner as far away as possible from the IRS. But yes, we do audits all the time, both for businesses and individuals. And I'm going to tell you, you do not want to do this yourself. because a lot of audits go criminal because of what the client says. You have to turn over the documentation, but you do not have to talk to the IRS. And when you get a legal representative, then the legal representative can deal with the IRS and you don't even have to talk to them.
I'm going to tell people something. Let me tell you something. I know there's people out there like this gentleman who wrote and said how hard it's been on him mentally. Let me tell you something. Once you sign with Lance's firm, you no longer have to talk to the IRS anymore. You take over, don't you?
That's exactly right. And in fact, it's a condition of our continued representation that you not talk to the IRS. And that's primarily because then we don't know what's going on. And you'll say, you said one thing to the IRS will tell us, oh no, he said something else, and I can't argue with him because I'm not privy to the conversation. So we do not want our clients talking to the taxing authorities directly, because you can only hurt yourself by doing that.
I want to make sure people also understand you don't just do individual tax work. You also handle for businesses too. That's very important.
Yes, we do a lot of businesses as well. And I'd say 70% or more of our clientele are self-employed individuals. And the reason that is the taxes aren't automatically taken out. So those are the people that get in trouble, because when the tax becomes due, they've already spent all the money.
You've got to explain something, because everybody wants to know, Lance, what is the Fresh Start program?
Well, the Fresh Start program, everybody says, can you get me in this fresh? I said, it's just, I can't call them up and say, hey, give this guy a fresh start. Yes. It doesn't work that way. They did make through the program, make it easier for offers in compromise to be accepted, that the filing of the lien would take place at a higher tax liability level. But you still have to prove to the IRS that your client doesn't have the ability to pay all this back. So it's just a term of art. It doesn't really mean anything. I wish I could just call them up and say, hey, give the guy a fresh start. Or I could be Monty Hall and say, let's make a deal and not do anything else and do all the paperwork. But I can't do that. That's why I work every Saturday and Sunday morning.
It's, again, reason for a show like this is to educate you and to let you know that there's companies out there. There's a firm, and I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of national firms out there. It's like Lance said, I'm telling you, because I do the research, I can't believe if you start researching these big national firms, the biggest thing is they don't mind taking your money, but it's really hard to get them to return a phone call. I know you've heard that before, Lance.
Oh yeah, they'll just tell me they hired so and so, and they never got back with them, or they, and it's a year or longer, and nobody gets a hold of them. So we try to reach out about every month to get a hold of our clients, whether anything's going on or not. And part of the thing is it's taking much longer to get a resolution now with the IRS than it did in the old days prior to the pandemic. They're so backlogged. They have such poor training for their new employees. So we're having to clean up their mistakes. And it's just, I've never seen the IRS as bad in all my 20 years of doing this as they are now. And I don't see that it's going to get any better in the short run.
Even with all these 89 new hires, Lance?
Well, they haven't hired all those people. And now if you're listening to Mr. Trump, he's not going to do
might be
away
on the border.
Well, right. He's not going to do away with the IRS. Everybody says, oh, he's going to get rid of the IRS. They're not going to do that. But I do think you're going to see that those 87,000 or that 80 billion is not going to come to fruition. So, but it's going to hurt the small practitioner. I don't think it's going to hurt us. We may have temporary lapses. And we probably could have more work now, except there are some people who are under the idea that the IRS is going to be abolished in the near future, and that's just not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen. Lance, we've got about 3 minutes. I want you, and I know you're a humble person, but I want you to tell people why they should hire your firm.
Well, they should hire my firm because we go the extra mile. When we send out those financial statements, a lot of practitioners will just take what you put down the first time and go with that. Well, nobody fills them out right. We may have to go back and forth with the client 3, 4, 5 times. We've got to get those numbers right because you're submitting those numbers under penalties of perjury. And secondly, guess what? You give us bad numbers, we're going to give you bad advice.
Right.
So we got to do the work to make sure that's done. And so we do put a lot of time. That's why the fees are what the fees are. Because if you're going to do it right, the president of the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers says you better spend 9 months on your client's case at least. And now with as slow as the IRS is, it can sometimes take a year. But part of that is a lot of times we're waiting on the client because they're not getting us the financial information we need. They're not getting us the supporting documentation we need. They're not getting their tax returns prepared or giving us tax organizers to prepare the returns for them. And all of that is going to delay a resolution.
One of the things so important when you meet with Lance or anyone in his firm, be honest, tell them everything, because you're right, Lance. If they give you bad information, it's bad information going out too.
Right.
Tell people now, it looks like we got people from all over Tennessee and Nashville and Tennessee and Missouri and in San Antonio area. We're running the number down below the screen, but our big audience is on iHeart and Spotify. Who can't see the screen, please tell people how they can reach your office.
Well, they can go to lancedrury.com and all of the telephone numbers for all of the offices are there. If they call after hours, in the evenings, Saturdays and Sundays, we have an answering service because in this day and age, people are not going to wait. You better have somebody answering the phones 24/7 or they're going to move on to somebody else. So yeah, just go to lancedrurylaw.com and you can see all of the phone numbers for all of the offices.
Lance, we're so lucky to have you. You'll be back again with us next month. And we're also going to be replaying the show. We'll be replaying the show next week also. So if you miss it, or you can go to iHeart. Thanks, Lance. Have a good weekend. Okay. We'll see you next month.
Always good to see you, Steve.
Okay, buddy. Love you, bro. Hey, we're going to go to a short break. We come back. I've got a great second half show. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On KBRLegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. We thought it would be a great show today to do with having our tax show opening up in the opening hour. And then following up, we have one of the top estate planning law firms in the state of Tennessee. We're going to be talking about wills, probate, and we're so happy that we've had this show, and it just makes a perfect bookend show. We're talking taxes in the first half, and now we're going to talk second half. Let me introduce you to our great expert attorney, Alex Busher. Good afternoon, Alex.
Hey, how are you?
We're doing good. I always love that guitar. If you're watching right now on YouTube, you always have that guitar back there. It's just like my eyes are just fixed on it.
Well, it's my Les Paul, but I do a lot of work for musicians and other artists in terms of not only estate planning but business law and intellectual property. So, it just kind of goes along with the theme of my law firm.
Oh, absolutely. So speaking of your law firm, tell everybody about your firm.
Yeah, so Busher Law was founded in 2018. We specialize in practice in business law, real estate, estate planning, intellectual property. So we do everything, from drafting contracts, submitting copyrights and trademarks, to making sure that our clients have their assets passed to who they want them to be passed to upon their death, as well as making sure that they avoid probate and avoid unnecessary taxes. We also set up different asset protection plans for our clients, but also as part of our estate planning, we try to build in asset protection for our clients' children, so they have an asset protected vehicle for the rest of their lives that's at their disposal.
Some of these emails we've gotten, it seems like senior law is a real big area now. What is elder law?
So elder law is kind of a function of estate planning, but also additional services. So not only are we looking at estate planning, but you're looking at estate planning kind of more towards with an eye towards Medicaid and setting up irrevocable trusts, prior to the 5-year look-back period, in order to be able to continue to maintain some assets for your descendants, while still being able to take Medicaid. Medicaid has a spend down limit of about $2,500. So if you don't do any planning, you have to spend all of your assets down to $2,500 before you can start taking Medicaid for nursing home expenses and stuff like that.
People need to plan because prices, long-term care is just ungodly, isn't it?
They are. It's really, really expensive. And there's ways to have Medicaid pay for a lot of those expenses. But you have to plan ahead. So there is that 5-year look back period. So if you're, thinking that you might need to take Medicaid in the future, the earlier you start planning, the better.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. People are probably going to say, well, everybody knows what a will is, but you know what? And I bring this up because you're in the entertainment business also. I bring this up that Prince, with all of his money, passed away without a will. So maybe people don't know exactly what a will and when it's needed. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So, there's really 3 different ways that assets are passed upon somebody's death to their descendants. So the first way is intestacy. So that means that there's no will, there's no trust. People died, their assets are in their name, and they have to be retitled into the name of somebody else. That goes along the intestacy statutes, and each state has a different way of determining that. So Colorado has a different way than Tennessee than New York. So it really depends on what state you're in. To avoid all of your assets passing by the statute, you can draft a will. A will does not avoid probate, though. So a will just directs the court. Instead of using the intestacy statute, I want my assets to go here, here, and here. This person is written out of my will. I want to give this amount to charity, things like that. So if there's no will, it's just all going to be passed per the statute. Usually it goes to the spouse and then the kids, or the spouse gets a percentage and then the kids get a certain percentage. If there's no spouse or kids, it usually goes to the parents. So each state kind of differs on that. But if you want to make sure that your house goes to one kid and not the other, or a car, or your jewelry goes to one of your kids, or you want to designate, certain pieces of jewelry to certain kids, that can only be done by a will or a trust. What I advocate for is to avoid having the will be the main part of the estate plan, and instead have a trust, because a trust avoids probate. So you don't have to have a probate lawsuit if all of your assets are titled in the name of the trust. So if you have a will, you're guaranteed to file a lawsuit against yourself upon your death. If you have a trust, no lawsuit needs to be filed, and your trustee, generally either your kids or sometimes a corporate trustee is used, will then administer those assets instead of a court administering the assets. So there's still a period where you have to notify creditors and settle the estate, but it's settled out of court instead of in court. And even with a trust, you have a pour over will. So let's say somebody buys a car and forgets to put it in the name of the trust. That pour over will then pour that asset into the trust through a probate process, which is why it's really important to get all of your assets titled in the name of the trust, or have a beneficiary designation on certain accounts like IRAs, 401ks, life insurance policies to the trust, since transferring those would actually have tax implications.
One of the first things you told me when we got started, speaking of probate, you said, I want to do all I can to keep my clients out of probate. And for those of you who don't know, have never gone through probate, it's very expensive. So it's nice and refreshing to have an attorney say, I want to keep you out of probate.
Yeah. It's not only expensive, but it's time consuming, and it's unpredictable. So whereas if there's a will or a trust in place, it's predictable where the assets are going to go, who's entitled, who's not. With probate, it becomes a lot more wishy-washy, and challenges can be made. So anything you can do to stay out of probate is going to not only help out yourself, but really help out your descendants, your beneficiaries. So that's why I recommend at least a revocable trust, especially in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, are there different types of trust?
There are. So there's a revocable trust, which is what I'm talking about here.
Heard of that, yes.
Yeah, and a revocable trust is just making it so that your assets don't go through probate. It doesn't provide any asset protection for the life of the beneficiary. You can provide asset protection for your kids, though. So once you pass away, it becomes irrevocable, and then you do have asset protection. An irrevocable trust is generally set up for life insurance policies, and then also if you have an estate larger than $28 million and have estate tax issues. Also, if you are a doctor or a lawyer and have a lot of assets that you want protected from creditors.
What is a dynasty trust?
So a dynasty trust is a trust that lasts for up to 1,000 years, actually forever in some states. So up until 20 years ago,
All states have it?
Not all states, no. Just a few. Tennessee does not, but it recognizes them if you set them up correctly. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm a little under the weather. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're here with attorney Alex Boucher right now. He's an estate planning attorney in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, I think a trust is really important to set up. We were talking about different types of trusts. Right now, revocable trusts are going to be the trust that most most people will need. If you have need for asset protection, then you're looking at an irrevocable trust. But Tennessee does not have those dynasty trust provisions, but a place like Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota, they do. So you can have a trust last up to 1,000 years. So the benefit of that is you'll never have estate taxes after the first transfer. So if you set up a revocable dynasty trust, the first transfer, if you have under 28 million, won't be subject to estate taxes. If it's over 28 million, that first transfer would be subject, which is why generally we would use a different tool. But if you're under it, then those assets roll into the trust never dies, so that there's never another implication where there would be a rollover to the next generation where there would have to be an estate tax distribution, essentially. So that's a major help, because if you put like real estate assets or a bunch of stock assets into a revocable or an irrevocable trust or an irrevocable dynasty trust that became irrevocable upon your death, then those assets will grow and grow and grow and grow, and they could grow to over the estate tax limit if they were held personally, but since they're in an irrevocable trust, they would never be taxed. And then your beneficiaries can use those assets, can take distributions for as long as they live, but their spouses can't take it, the IRS can't take it, judgment creditors can't take it. If they have like medical bills, it's all protected, and then they can even take Medicaid and other government benefits because those assets aren't technically theirs. So it's really giving, I think passing inheritance onto your descendants and your kids is, an amazing thing. Trying to create generational wealth, an amazing thing. But if you pass it on in a trust format, so that they have asset protection for their life, and you have the peace of mind knowing that when you pass, those assets cannot be taken by the spouse, by the IRS, by creditors, that they are going to be there for not only your kids but your grandkids and even potentially their grandkids, as long as it continues to remain invested and grow. I think that's the biggest gift that a parent can give their beneficiaries.
We just got a text from somebody. They want to know, how's the best way to choose a power of attorney without hurting others' feelings?
Honestly, I think it's always difficult, but what I do is I'll name everybody in the document that you're worried about hurting their feelings. So you make your first choice, your second choice, third choice, fourth choice. And I know even the rank can be upsetting, but generally if people appear in the document, they're happier than if they're not in the document at all. Obviously, if you don't want somebody to be your power of attorney, you don't list them. But if you're okay with them, if everyone else is predeceased or everyone else decides against being your power of attorney, then having multiple people and multiple agents in there is, a way to make sure that there's backups for you, but also keep people happy.
This next question I have for you, it's a very personal question because I went through it with our daughter. We have a autistic daughter. So when you have a family that with special needs, how can they protect them and ensure their benefits continue? Because I got to tell you, I was in for a rude awakening when our daughter turned 18 and saw the state take over.
Yeah. So in that case, a special needs trust is really important, or a supplemental needs trust. And what that is any gifts and even your assets to your kids, instead of rolling it over to them directly or to their guardian if they're under the 18, you roll it over into this lifetime asset protection trust that we're talking about, that the trust that never ends, that they have access to but never distributes. So it gives them protections from their spouse, any creditors, any IRS issues, but it also keeps intact their eligibility for Medicaid and Social Security disability benefits and other government programs as well. So as long as nothing transfers to their name, that will not affect their eligibility for those programs. So keeping that in an irrevocable trust and setting up a special needs trust so that if something were to happen to you, your child doesn't automatically get kicked off of their benefits because there was just a massive transfer of assets to them, is really important. So that's where really setting up a revocable trust, but including a special needs trust within the revocable trust, is going to be the most effective, so that they can continue to take those government benefits and not be removed from those benefits, while also having the ability to access the assets that you've passed down.
Boy, I tell you, things really change when they turn 18. And Alex, there's like not a school to learn how to do this. But one of the things I learned is let an attorney handle this. Don't try to do this yourself. There's a lot. I don't know in Tennessee, but in Florida, there is so much paperwork that has to be filled out when they turn 18.
Yeah. Yeah, I set up mainly on the parent side. In terms of my practice, I set up those special needs trusts, and then I generally have somebody who's involved with SSI or Social Security, Disability, or Medicaid, depending on the agency that's impacted. I actually usually have my clients work directly with somebody who just does that.
That's great.
Because it's such a complicated process, and it's really helpful
Yes.
to know the players in the game, know the players who are
Yes.
actually on the other side of the table in the agencies, and that's where a local expert in just handling SSI, Medicaid, that's really where they come in.
What's the difference between a trustee and an executor?
So a trustee administers the trust. An executor is essentially the representative in court. So in some states it's called a personal representative, in other states it's called an executor. But if you were to have a will and no trust, then your executor would be who represents you in court and then makes all of the actual changes to the titles once the court has issued the order and the letters testamentary. So that's the executor. If you have a trust, the trustee is going to administer the trust. But if you have a trust, you still have a pour-over will, which means you also have to have an executor for that pour-over will. Usually, it's a different person to the trustee, but that just kind of depends on the estate plan.
Once a trust is set up, how does it get funded?
You have to actually go and fund it yourself. So if you have your house in your personal name, you have to retitle it through a quitclaim deed into the name of the trust. Two things on that: if you have a mortgage, really important to call your mortgage company so you're not violating the due on sale clause. So a lot of times they'll ask for some documentation or at least to see the deed. And then also call your insurance company to make sure that the house or the trust is listed as an additional insured. With the California wildfires, we've actually seen quite a few insurance companies try to weasel their way out of paying on claims because the house was transferred into a revocable trust, and that revocable trust was not an additional insured. So those are really important. With cars, some states like Colorado have a transfer on death to the trust. Other states like Tennessee, you actually have to title it in the name of the trust. Then bank accounts generally payable on death to the trust, or you can transfer them into the name of the trust if they're not tax advantaged. Anything tax advantaged or life insurance with beneficiary designations, you can make the beneficiaries either your direct beneficiaries or the trust itself. And that's how it gets funded. So if you just write these accounts are in the trust, they're not in the trust. You actually have to go and change the titling on the accounts themselves.
So, people listening today have heard you refer to Colorado. You also, if you have a family member or a friend who needs estate planning, you also handle Colorado also.
I do. Yeah, the two states I handle are Tennessee and Colorado. Currently expanding, so I'll probably have a few more states that I'll be working in and with attorneys from in the next 12 months or so.
Well, it's such an important area. Is it better to hold real estate in a trust, or is it better to have it held in an LLC?
So it completely depends on your goal. So if it's your primary residence and you're not renting it out for any commercial purposes, and it's just your primary residence, then putting it in a trust is likely the best, so that you maintain that $250,000 or $500,000 exemption if you decide to sell it, that primary residence exemption, and then there's no liability. So just putting it into the trust to make it easy to transfer upon death is I think the right way to go in that situation. If you're renting out a property, that's where LLCs are key. LLCs limit your liability. So, whereas with your primary residence, you really don't have a lot of liability issues because you're living in the house. If you have a house that you're renting out and somebody gets hurt in that house, that's where liability comes in. So you can put that house into an LLC, make the LLC actually rent the property. And then if there was a claim, the only asset that the person could get at would be what's in the LLC and not your personal assets, like your primary residence. Whereas if that was in the trust and not an LLC, then if somebody got hurt in that property, they could get to all of your assets. So LLCs are always really about liability protection and investment. And then with that LLC property, you would then, instead of looking to primary residence deduction, you could have a different type of real estate transaction to avoid taxes in that regard, because it's a real estate. So 1031 exchange would come to mind.
I noticed you said you also practice the area of real estate law. Tell me areas within real estate that you practice.
So I really just do transactional real estate law. So deeds, purchase and sale agreements, title work, title review. I'll do easements and covenants, but generally I don't handle any disputes of any kind.
But I got to tell you, everything we hear, there's so many people moving to Nashville. Is that true?
Yeah, there are a lot of people moving to Nashville. I think it's slowed down a little bit in the last 12 months. But down here in Franklin, they're building massive new communities. It seems like there's a new community starting every day.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely expanding.
I know we do a show in California. There's so many people in Southern California who are moving now. They don't want to move within Southern California. They want to move out of the state, and Nashville is like one of the top areas.
Yeah, there's entire streets here where it's like mostly California now, honestly.
I know. So tell me, we got a couple minutes left. Tell me, why should someone come to Buescher Law?
Well, there's a few reasons. One, we are very diligent and efficient about the work we do. So, we try to turn around these plans in 3 weeks to a month tops. We can usually get them done sooner if necessary. The other thing is, because I practice business law, real estate, estate planning, asset protection, intellectual property, I know how to get all of the assets into the trust. And that's really why I've got a niche with musicians, is because they have so many different income streams from royalties. Getting all of that into the trust can be a challenge, especially if an attorney doesn't understand the music business and all of the different rights and royalty streams that are coming in. So it's really about knowing your client, knowing the asset mixes, and then because I practice real estate and business law, we can look at your LLCs, do succession planning in the operating agreements. We can look at your corporations, do assignments of shares to make sure those get in the LLCs. I can draft the deeds to real property myself and get those filed. So instead of having to hire multiple attorneys to do, one thing, which is you're trying to get your estate plan, but some attorneys don't understand LLC law or corporate law, and they have to bring in another attorney. I really take a holistic view to make sure that we're doing the best. We're setting up the best plan for my clients possible, and that even includes if there's multiple LLCs. Maybe we look at reorganizing it into a holding company structure, or in Tennessee there's a series LLC law where you can have a single LLC and then multiple LLCs under it, but only have one filing. So lots of different ways to reorganize, and Buescher Law takes a holistic approach instead of just saying, let's do a trust and will, and look to other attorneys for the outside interests like the real estate or like business interests.
Well, we've been running your phone number throughout the show, but we realize most people listen on iHeart and Spotify. Tell people how they can reach your office.
Yeah, so if you want to get a hold of me, my office number is 615-953-0500. And my email is alex@buscherlaw.com, alex@buscherlaw.com.
Well, Alex, we've so enjoyed having you. You're a world of information. Thank you so much. What a great job you do on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate being here.
Thanks. That's Alex Buscher. He's an estate planning attorney in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, that's going to do it for us today. What a great 50 minutes of great information. Thank you, Juan. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.